Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. I'm einav Avni and Tangle Coaching, and with me today I've got Shanenn Bryant. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Really great to have you here. So please tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Sure. Well, I am ACA survivor or adult child of alcoholic. So my father was an alcoholic. And of course, my childhood was very violent and chaotic. Growing up was really difficult. And, you think when all of that stuff is going on at home, it's really hard then the next day to go to school and learn multiplication and division. It just makes it really difficult to do. And so my parents finally divorced when I was about 12. And I told my dad at the time, like, as long as you're still drinking, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And he really took that to heart. And so I didn't speak to him again until I was 25. And he still had relationships with my two brothers, but we didn't have any type of relationship. And I think that even furthered some of my self esteem issues, my feelings of self worth, because I felt like, gosh, if my own father doesn't love me, I'm really not worthy of love. And so I became extremely jealous in my relationships, whether there was anything to be jealous about or not. It's just it was a constant anxious that I had. So if you would have told me even 8 years ago that now I would be helping people overcome jealousy in their relationship, I would have said, there's no way. There's no way I could do that. For a couple of reasons. One, I just thought this is just how I am. This is just who I am, and I'm destined to be this way forever. I had tried a couple different things to get over that or overcome jealousy, and it didn't work. So I just thought, oh, this is just who I am, and there's no way to change it. And the second reason was really, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one that had these such intense feelings and how much it was really disrupting my life. So I would have said, there's no way that I would be in a position to help others.
But there's so many things that you're saying now. Obviously, you are on the other side of that. But as you're describing, right, the growing up with this, the
Yeah.
environment, atmosphere at home, really the challenges of, as you say, how do you get on with your school life, but
Yeah.
also the impact that it had on you, as you say, making these connections that if someone is doing this to me, then it must be me. You don't see that, oh, it's them, and they have challenges and stuff like that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I took it as, and it was just the story that I told myself from the time I was 12, um, well into my later years that I, I'm not really worthy of love. I don't deserve it. There's something wrong with me. Um, until I started to dig into that and go, wait a second, I need to really be open to a new explanation. And I talk about that a lot in my coaching program of you have to be open to a new explanation because there always can be a different explanation. And certainly in my case, it was that was my father's problem and issue. And he had this disease and he had this struggle in his own life, had nothing to do with my worthiness as a person or my ability for someone to love me.
But what you're saying also is really, it's really mature, and it doesn't matter what age this matureness came about, to recognize that actually what is happening is not necessarily the end result or the end place to be, right? To recognize that, as you said, leaning into to understanding that there must be another option or another explanation for this. This is
Mm-hmm.
this is like, I say mature, but I think it really takes a lot of courage and a lot of recognition that it's not, you can't go on like this anymore, to actually go and start digging into this.
Yeah, I mean, the jealousy got so bad in my life. It was truly affecting every single aspect of my life, and to where it became just this habitual thing of every day I was anxious, I didn't feel good, I was sad, I was upset, I was nervous, and it affected even just simple things like going to dinner, going to the movies, watching TV. So I knew that maybe I'm never going to overcome this, but I really have to give it a shot because I can't continue to go on and to live this way. And so that's when I started, I went to a couple different therapists, and I think one, you have to make sure that you're matched up with that therapist, because they could be a wonderful therapist, but if they don't match with you, or they don't have that expertise that you feel like you're really needing, then that might not be. And I think sometimes we give up when we go, gosh, I've went a few times, I don't feel any better, this really isn't working. And it could just be something as simple as that. But then on the last one that I went to, she introduced me to the 12, they call it the laundry list for an adult child of an alcoholic, where it has all these behavior characteristics. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that existed. And when I finally saw it on paper, like, yes, there's 12 or 14. I think it's grown a couple, but, going, yep, that's me. Yes, that's me. Yes, that's me. But it was so great to now finally go, okay, that must mean there are other people that have all of these things. If we've made a list of it, anytime, that's how we make policies and rules, right? Someone's done something and we go, oh, wait a minute, we need to write this down for other people. And so it was just such an eye opener for me to go, okay, finally there's a name for it, or there's a characteristic that I share with other people, and I'm not alone. And so that was kind of the turning point to go, well, then there must be a solution.
Mm. And the question, so you talk about the jealousy, but did you find that it was mostly in a romantic kind of relationship, or was that also with friendships or any other relationship?
Yeah, it was really in my romantic relationship. And I think because there are a lot of things, especially growing up in that environment, I didn't have a really good role model to go, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. It was the exact opposite of that. And then you kind of get to where you know that it's chaotic, and you know that it doesn't feel good, but it's comfortable. You think that that's just kind of how it is. So I didn't have a real good role model for for a romantic relationship. And so it definitely came out in that. And I think that relationship with my father, where, that male affection and attention and love just wasn't there.
Mm.
Yeah.
I hear you. I mean, because I've heard so many, so many other people as well. And I guess also my story, other people's story, that it's about this translation, right? Of something happens, and I know as a child, right, that I'm not happy, or I'm not feeling loved or nourished, or all of that. Then I start taking it on me, and then because I've created this story for myself, I now use that in other relationships and interactions that I have with people. So it's really it really does take a big step to say, actually, I don't want that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, and we hear it, they say that, your thoughts then control kind of your behaviors and your actions. And so
Mm.
those things, those stories, those beliefs that you have, most of the time, we don't really recognize that that's what we're saying. It's not like I knew from the time I was 12 on that I'm telling myself that, my father doesn't love me. I would think that and hope that we would have, hope that he would stop drinking and we would have a relationship. But I really didn't tie it into, you're telling yourself this
Yeah.
this story on repeat, and it's affecting how you're behaving. Because for the longest time, I didn't think it affected me. I thought, well, when he contacted me when I was 25, I was like, why would I need to have a relationship with you now? The things that you feel like your dad's supposed to be there for, those are past, right? Riding a bike and learning how to drive and going on a first date and all of those things that
Mm.
he missed. Why do I need him now? I'm okay. I didn't think it was affecting me. And of course we know that's not true.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
affecting every aspect of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was that like to get back in touch with him and deciding to allow him
Yeah.
in?
Well, initially, so my mom really pushed for a long time for me to have a relationship with my dad. And I kept saying, no, I don't need it. I'm okay. I don't care.
Mm,
I don't want him in my life. So that went on for years of me kind of resisting after he contacted me of, I don't really want to have a relationship with you. And it was this push pull of, I really do. And I wish that we could have that father daughter relationship, but I'm so angry and upset. And you weren't in my life for so long that now it would feel weird for you to be, back in my life. So, one, you have to be ready. Like you
mm,
have to be ready, whether it's trying to heal past wounds or, starting up this relationship with somebody that's really hurt you in the past. You have to be ready for that. So, eventually, as I was going through and realizing how jealousy was affecting me so much, I knew that there was a connection. There has to be some sort of tie. And so maybe it would benefit me to just have a conversation with them. But I went into it with the idea of to apologize to me. Like, I'm looking for you to apologize for what you did. And I want you to understand how much it affected my life and how much it hurt me and the struggles that I'm having now because of you. And so that was my initial approach. It didn't go well, as you can imagine. And that apology wasn't going to happen, and for quite some time. And sometimes people never get that apology.
yeah.
And so I realized it's not going to come from him, or from that apology, because I felt like if he recognizes it, that'll help me to get over it. That'll be the thing. Okay, he understands and he accepts it and he knows what he did. That'll make everything better.
Mm,
And it doesn't. You still have to do the work yourself. Someone else isn't going to be able to change that for you at that point. Um, but I thought, well, he's not going to apologize. I have to do this on my own. I have to do it without the apology. And it can be done. You don't need that other person to own up to or have that apology.
yeah. That's the closure, right? That's the closure that you need to get for yourself, regardless of what these people are doing or saying.
Exactly. Exactly. And, once we did start talking and I got over okay, I'm not going to have conversations with him with the expectation of he's going to apologize. I'm going to have these conversations to learn about, what is another explanation? What else to this story is there?
Mm,
And, just learning through him. And not every situation is like this, because I think some people have had struggles where they just feel like it's just unforgivable. That person did stuff that's just unforgivable. And that's okay too. For me, I went into it that way, but I really just kind of pushed myself to, I need to have some more conversations because I really need to to figure this whole thing out and see if there's anything else, another explanation. And so through those conversations, realizing that he, of course, then had, a history of alcoholism in his family. And so a lot of those things were passed down. My parents got married very young. My mom was pregnant with my older brother. So, he's a young kid himself, really
mm,
struggling with all of these new responsibilities and these things going on and having that history of alcoholism. And so when you kind of get to understand, okay, he's human, and I can see how he struggled and wished that he could change too. So, that was a little bit of an ease to go. If somebody were to measure me for me struggling so much with jealousy and not being able to fix it on a dime, you know, um, I wouldn't want that. And so, in this situation, particularly, like I said, everyone's situation is different, but that then helped to go, okay, I know more of the story and there is another explanation. It's not that he doesn't love me or has never loved me. He has a disease and he has a problem.
I think I really like what you said about this. People don't do things on purpose necessarily. We sometimes say, "Oh, you did this to me," and then they like, "I didn't even think about you when I was doing it. I was barely thinking
Right.
about myself." So
Right.
so now, but yes, recognizing that there's subsequence to our actions, and it's so, I think, so interesting to actually say, do you know what? I get it. It's You didn't necessarily do it to me, although I am the one that was suffering. And now, from a more mature point of view, again, I can see that you were suffering yourself, and maybe now we can have a different conversation to the one that I was having, when I was still in
Right.
anger and blame.
Yeah. 100%. And that didn't mean that, okay, everything changed with my mindset and I still had to do that work of, well, you're still, you've got that story that you've told yourself forever. You have these habits of being extremely jealous in your relationships. So I still had to fix those,
Mm.
but it was a starting point for sure.
Yeah. Because I was talking to one of my clients. Maybe I've mentioned that to you. When she was talking about her mum was an alcoholic, and it happened when she was young. Although all of that is kind of a chapter behind her, and they have a very good relationship. You know, as a coach, I can definitely see that behavior that she kind of made herself to be. She has to be the responsible one, and she has to
Yeah.
be the one that, controls everything and sorts everything out. It's like a learned behavior that the other kids don't have, but because of, uh, you know, her childhood and the way that things were back then, she did create to herself this reality. That was what she knew how to do. So now, as an
Yeah.
adult, to say actually we don't have to do this in this way, it's it's a really big thing for her to hear.
Yeah, 100%. There's a really great book by Dr. Atlas, and it's called Emotional Inheritance. It's phenomenal. It's one of Amazon's bestsellers, and it talks about how there's even where people they're upset because, like, now I'm the one that has to do the work because my parents or grandparents or great grandparents didn't end this cycle and do the work. Now it's on me to do the work
Mm.
to stop, you know, um, sending that down the line, basically. And so, yeah, I mean that's another piece of it too is being upset about me having to be the one to go back now and do this work. So,
Yeah. I always, one of my things that I always say it, I find I say it maybe sometimes too much, but it is about this understanding, right? That things are not happening to us, but for us. And when we understand that, we all of a sudden we are able to let go, maybe sometimes, of some of the anger and the frustration, and start thinking in a different way of, okay, so what does it mean? And I guess in your case, it's also right. It brought you to where you are today with coaching about jealousy and the help that
yeah.
you give people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would never say, "Oh gosh, I'm so glad that happened."
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, but when you take it and are able to work through it and go, "Okay, I I understand how I got here and I understand what I need to do to then to get past it and move forward.
mm,
And then how can I help other people do that?" And for me, that was the biggest thing of when I realized I'm not the only one. And there are tons and tons and tons of people that suffer with this, with jealousy. And the problem is we don't talk about it enough because it has some shame and embarrassment behind it. We're not putting extremely jealous on our dating profiles. It's not
no,
something that we're advertising. And so we don't talk about it a lot.
mm,
And it's a really complex emotion because of that, because you've got your normal emotions when you feel jealous, like fear and anger, but then you have these self-conscious emotions that complete and continue that cycle of, well, now I felt that way, or I did a behavior and now my partner's upset with me, or I caused a scene, or I cried about this. And the fact that I feel like this and it's affecting my life, I'm ashamed of that. I'm embarrassed by it. I feel guilty for the things that I did. And it just keeps, then you're just in this cycle of that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it gets difficult.
It's so, it's so sad. This, I really feel this, that, we have these subconscious behaviors. We have something that is pulling us or pushing us to behave in a certain way. And although we dealing with the symptoms, actually there is a whole lot, underneath the surface that we don't even understand. So
Yeah.
to be in a, if you end up with a relationship that, the other person doesn't even understand, why are you so jealous when they haven't given you the, any reason to worry or
Yeah.
anything, it's a whole different kind of struggle. That it's like, okay, so yes, I get that you didn't do anything, but I can't help it. This is how I feel.
Yeah. And that's where we get stuck a lot of times because we tend to want to rely on our partner to make us feel better, to make us feel safe, to make us feel secure in the relationship. And oftentimes they can be understanding and they can
Mm,
help in different ways, but they can't make, that's inside work that needs to be done. And
still,
it's
yeah.
really difficult, certainly for someone, your partner who doesn't probably experience that. And so trying to understand what you're going through is a little bit difficult. And then typically, our actions or our comments or behaviors are geared towards them. So now, we're accusing them of things when we don't have any real evidence of it, or we're questioning them, or we're going through their phone or their email or social media, whatever it is. So our behaviors are geared towards them. And then we want them to be understanding and make us feel good and safe. And that's a hard position for a partner to be
Yeah, I imagine. So
in.
before we get a little bit more into the jealousy and the work that you do, which I'm really curious to hear about, I just want
Sure.
to go back to what you said earlier about the laundry list, because I was curious
Mm.
about that. I haven't heard about that before.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me, you said that when you saw it, one thing was that you recognized that other people were obviously going through the same or similar things.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you share with us about the laundry list?
Sure. So one of them is that we feel guilty when we stand up for ourselves. That's one. And which is also ties into a lot of times people that are jealous in their relationship because they have a hard time standing up for their boundaries and what they are willing to accept and not willing to accept. Approval seekers, they'll do anything to make other people happy. They need that, they want that. And a lot of times feel like that's how they add value. If they, I have to have that person has to like me and I have to do for them because that's the only way that I add value to this relationship. So that's another one. Feelings of low self-esteem. We judge ourselves very harshly. We also judge other people harshly.
Yes.
Yeah, so um following through on projects. So that's another one which seems like, maybe some people have it, but when you kind of see all the rest in the list and you go, that's on there too. Um, what other ones? Either very impulsive, or we're really by the book, like rule followers. I'm doing everything by the book. We also have kind of this fear of authority figures. So it
Mm.
could be supervisors, it could be the police, it could be anyone that we think, a parent, that's in that authority figure role, which for me, I really felt that with in my workspace where, in my career that I was always intimidated by my supervisor. So I had a hard time communicating ideas or expressing ideas or feeling bold about my work to kind of move forward and move up because I had that sort of a scare of authority figures.
But
So those are just a few.
yeah, but the this laundry list. So this is specifically for people like kids to alcoholic parents. Is that correct?
It is adult children of alcoholics. Now I know I can't remember what the other thing is, but they were saying that the laundry list also kind of ties in with people, and I can't remember if it's people with um, maybe OCD, something. I can't remember what the other tie-in, but it
Mm.
was made by the original founders of ACA.
Right.
So adult child of alcoholics. So yeah, yeah.
It's fascinating. I must say, I recognize some of the things that you mentioned there, and I'm thinking,
Uh-huh.
well, I need to
Yeah.
look into this, although I don't think any of my parents were alcoholic, but
Right, right. Yeah, and you're right. Some of them can be like, well, that's just, the hard on ourselves, things like that. I think some people kind of fall into that perfectionism. I think it's really when you see the whole list together and go, okay, I'm really checking the marks on
mm,
all of these or the majority of them
yeah.
together. Yeah.
I can imagine how the impact that it had on you when you first saw it.
It was amazing. It was truly like a whole new world opened up because I didn't know it existed. I had no idea. I had no idea that there was, this group that helped people. I didn't know there was a program. I knew AA because my dad had attempted AA several times, and I knew about this 12-step program. Um, but I didn't know the ACA part of it for of children of those alcoholics, and that there's not the same, but there's a 12-step program for them too.
Mm,
Yeah.
so interesting. So tell me, so obviously you mentioned, right, that for you the the impact of all of this was came out as jealousy in relationship, and it took you some time to understand how to deal with
Yeah.
it, and now you're actually helping others to deal with their
Mm-hmm.
jealousy. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about how that started and about this journey.
Sure. Um, so my husband and I have been together for 13 years, almost 14 years now. And even in that relationship, I was the best girlfriend for like the first, 3 months, very laid back and chill. But when I started having feelings for someone, or whenever that time came that I started having feelings for someone, that's when that jealousy would really start to surface. And it was a really big struggle for us in the beginning. He never had given me any reason, any evidence. It was just I was jealous. I was worried from the get go, once I started to have feelings. So it caused a lot of arguments. It caused, unfortunately, at one point, where we get very controlling in terms of what we want that other person to do or what they're kind of allowed to do so that we don't feel insecure. And it would be to the point where he would feel like he had to walk with his head down, or he couldn't look a certain direction, or he couldn't go hang out with his friends because I would get up so upset about it. It would make me so anxious and so nervous. And I would question him, wondering, who did you talk to today? What did you do? I mean, it was really bad. And we just couldn't take it anymore. We started to go to counseling together. And I mentioned before, I was at a point where like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I was so desperate. I felt like I'll do anything. And that's, people that are jealous and that they do seem controlling in those ways, like most of them would give anything to not be jealous, to be quote unquote normal and not let those things worry them. So we went to counseling, and I was coming from that space of just tell me what to do and I'll do it. But I didn't understand the whole tie quite yet, or the reasons behind it, or the stories that I was telling myself. So fortunately, we would go to counseling, and we would have an initial argument, then we would go to counseling or a therapist, and then we would argue again, and then we would have a third argument about the same thing, about new stuff that came up in therapy. And it really got to the point where and I hate to admit this, we got kicked out of therapy. We
Mhm.
were asked to not, not come back, but it was because my mindset was like, well, no, I know he's doing these things. I see it clearly with my own eyes. I know this is happening. I know that this is how all men are. I know this, like, I was not open to hearing any other thing at that time.
Mm.
And so it was just spinning and not really going anywhere. So I think it was a wake up call, getting kicked out of therapy and saying, okay, well, now what do I do? Because I still have this. I knew he was worth working through. And to be quite honest, I, should he have left? Probably, maybe. But he didn't. And he stuck with me. And he wasn't always, and this is why I say you can't rely on your partner to make you feel better because he wasn't always understanding. Some of the stuff
Mm.
really upset him that I would accuse him of or things that he would have to do. So being kicked out and then kind of going, okay, what else? I need to look into this. That's when I started having sort of those conversations with my dad and thinking about those types of things, but also and what, in my coaching program, and there's a course on it too of I had to start with the habits of breaking those jealous habits, looking through their phone, questioning them, all of those things because it gets so routine that then you have to, it's kind of the reverse. Like, okay, I'm not trying to build a healthy habit. I'm trying to break a bad habit.
And
And so I had to start there.
this is so, I mean, because feelings of jealousy is, it's like, it's like worry, right? I mean, yes, you can take a distance from your feelings and stuff like that, but I am so curious about what you're saying, and I love how you say it, right? I'm not starting a new better habit, I'm actually breaking a bad one.
Yeah.
But to have that, to sit there and think, you know and to have all of these thoughts and the feelings, and of course your habitual behavior of doing the jealousy, and then to say, actually, I'm finding another way to look at this. I'm calling
Mm-hmm.
another angle, another perspective of the whole thing. And this is, to me, that feels like the steepest step forward, after which probably things are a little bit smaller and better. But I,
Yeah.
it just sounds like such a huge step forward.
Yeah, it really was. And, one of the other things that I learned when I was like kind of doing research on my own, which I will say the research is a little sparse. I mean, and that's out there. Yes, you can find stuff on jealousy, but really kind of digging into it and figuring those things out and ways to overcome it is a little bit sparse. But when I was doing some research, I think one of the other really key turning points was understanding that I say or said at the time, jealousy is my problem. I have a problem with jealousy. The
Mhm.
thing is, jealousy is actually a solution. Jealousy isn't the problem, it's the solution to whatever then that root problem is.
Mm.
And so I thought, okay, I understand it because we do have to have some. No one is ever never going to be jealous. Most of us have experienced a little bit here and there or one situation where we might have gotten a little jealous, and that's okay. We have that in us from the very beginning of mankind, and it's there for a reason to signal us at certain times that, hey, maybe you're in the wrong relationship, or hey, maybe you need to think about protecting this over here. But when it becomes sort of that obsessive and it's starting to affect your happiness,
Mm.
that's when it becomes a problem. So jealousy is actually there to solve whatever that root problem is. And so that's where you have to get to, like, what then is the problem? Because it's not it's not really that I'm jealous. I'm jealous because I'm trying to, you know, do a few things. There's either you're trying to project, protect. There's also competition. So those are kind of the three types or ways that someone may be jealous. And so that's how it shows up. But then what's the root? What's the root cause of it?
Mm. So protect, project, or what was the third one?
Yeah, project, protect, competition. So projection, sometimes we may, let's say you're accusing your partner of flirting with somebody at work. You have no evidence, you don't know, but you're just, oh, are you flirting at work? Who are you talking to at work? Sometimes you may want to look at yourself and like, what am I doing at work? Am I being a little overly flirtatious with the guy in accounting? Maybe that's projection where you're kind of doing some of those things. You might feel okay with it because you're not going to take it to anything beyond that, but you don't know about your partner. So then you think, well, if I'm doing these things at work, are they doing those things at work? That's projection.
Mm-hmm.
Competition, that one I don't see as often, but it does come up where, maybe your partner is giving attention to somebody else that's important in their life. And, it could even be the thing that may pop up is an ex where they have a child together and they have to have some communication, that kind of thing. Or it could even be a mom, their mom, they're giving a lot of attention to their mother. We want that attention for ourselves. We're not really getting it much from them. That's competition. But the biggest one, I think, where most of us fall is the protection one. Like, we're trying to protect our heart. We're trying to make sure that, we don't want that person to leave us. We don't want to feel abandoned. We don't want to be hurt. And so that's the protection one, and probably where most people fall.
Mm. And so people who come to you, I'm also quite curious about that, because obviously you recognize that, as you said, you had a problem with jealousy. Is that how other people, is that how they define it for themselves as well? Is that something that they recognize?
Yeah, I think the recognition of it is pretty easy. Like, people understand that they have these jealous feelings. It's the, why am I so much like this? And I can't seem to get past it. And so they've tried, several different things. One of the things that we easily go to or consistently try to go to is exterior things, like, oh, if I were just thinner, I wouldn't feel this way. I'd feel more confident. Or if I made more money, or if I had this skill or this talent. And those are all external things that are never going to change that internal feeling of jealousy. And we know that from other things. Like, it's just not the answer. And then people feel let down, like, oh, I've been doing this and I worked so hard to do this, or I'm going to, spend extra time getting ready before we go to dinner, and I'll feel great about it and I'll feel more confident at dinner. It just almost never works. So, yeah. But they can definitely recognize it.
Okay, so people recognize. So then when they come to you, how are you helping them in your, obviously all of your experience and whatever helped you, what is the steps that you're taking the people that come to you?
So one, I think, is really figuring out, it's kind of burning the candle at both ends, really starting with the habits part, because there's two, what I call, types of habits. There's their action habits. Those are the ones that they identify pretty quickly. They know that they're doing it. They know that they're looking at their partner's phone. They know that they're having arguments with their partner. They know that they're keeping tabs on them. Those types of things, those are action ones. And so we can easily identify those action habits. But then there's the thinking habits. And those are sometimes need a little bit more to think through.
Yeah.
What have I been telling myself? What do I tell myself on a daily basis? What is maybe that story, whatever is behind that, those thinking habits. And then once we kind of have identified their habits, then it's doing that work to back out of them. At the same time, then some of that thinking habits will then help with, okay, what's the root cause and where is that coming from? And then working on the root cause issues at the same time. So it's kind of dual coaching.
It's fascinating to me. I mean, I think absolutely to understand, because you're dealing with the symptoms and actually saying, okay, but what is underneath that? And as you say, the habit of, and I see it because I work a lot with people with negative self-talk, and listening to that conversation, and actually the first thing that you do is get the awareness. What is it that I'm saying to myself? How am I finding myself every time in the same spot of, I'm against the wall, and everything I see about you is more evidence that you are, in this case, cheating or not being unfaithful, or whatever it is, right? And so it's yes, I get that it's definitely about recognizing the habit and then starting to figure out how to back out of this, how to change. And maybe before we go,
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about the podcast that you have.
Oh, I'm so excited for this podcast. So, the podcast is called Jealousy Junkies. It is launching on July 5th. And how this came about, so I have another podcast that I started, and just being on other people's podcasts, things like we're doing today, and talking about my story, I happened to mention that I struggle with jealousy because I was mostly talking about, the ACA, and the response and the feedback and the people that were like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only person. And I remember that feeling of, yeah, me too, and it's a terrible feeling. So, and I knew that before, just in my own work, that I wasn't the only one. But then I thought people really need something that they can go to, even if it's just a resource to kind of hear, you know, how do I work through this? This is great because I'm not the only one, and a community of people that are really struggling. And so there are going to be some great episodes. I have a neuroscientist coming on who's going to talk about how our brain works when we're jealous and all of those things. Therapists, just a great lineup of people that are really going to help walk through those steps, and just share in, yes, we know, and you're not the only one.
Yeah, well, jealousy, I think, is one of one of the emotions that are, is really really hard to unpack and to change and
Yeah.
to move away from, and I definitely recognize that. Um,
Yeah.
so I was just going to ask, maybe it's a silly question, but forgive me.
Yeah.
I mean, because obviously, as we spoke, and you had your dad was the alcoholic, and
Mhm.
basically you recognize that subconsciously you understood for yourself that you were not good enough, and then later on it reflected as, or it came out as jealousy in your relationship.
Mhm.
Is that I mean, is that what a lot of people with alcoholic parents feel, or is it, or as any other outcomes to this kind of behavior that people
Sure.
see?
Yeah, I think with the alcohol, the ACAs, there's definitely a lot of different directions that they go. There are some that go, I'm never ever drinking because it was such a big thing in my life. There are some that now they have that issue with alcohol because that's how they grew up. There are
Mm,
some that, you know, they take on a different thing, like they may be workaholics but still affecting their family. So there is a really good wide range of kind of how that affects people, but I think there are some general things of, yes, we usually have, maybe that anxious attachment style, that kind of comes along with that, and different things. But um, there's certainly similarities and characteristics that they share, but I think it kind of comes out in different ways for different people.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I appreciate you. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's been really fascinating. I like I said, I mean, I haven't had an alcoholic parent. I have some of my clients that recognize that. So it's really interesting to hear more about that, and I'll be fascinated to listen to the podcast when it comes out.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So excited about it. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I don't know if later on when you're giving me the links, the podcast, the link to the podcast, the new one will be there as well, or is that will
Um,
only come on the 5th?
Yeah, so the link that I'll send you will have a link to my website, but then also where people can sign up to get notified when that podcast launches. And they'll also get, of course, great information in the meantime and after. So you'll have that. And so everyone will know as soon as it's there.
Excellent, perfect, wonderful. Well, Shannon,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here today. I'm really looking forward to continuing with the with the podcast, like I said, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.